Hey, podcast. So excited for this episode. We are going to be discussing the proprioceptive system. But before that, do you watch MasterChef?
I have, yeah.
I love that show. And I feel like we have been like binge watching all seasons. And then I just recently, well, for Christmas, I got like a Hulu subscription for a few months. And because, okay, on not Netflix, Amazon Prime, you only can get like, I don't even know why this is probably interesting to anybody. It probably isn't, you guys. Sorry, fast forward, just kidding. No, but on Amazon Prime, they only have seasons 7 through 10 available. And I'm like, oh, so we already binge watched that. Don't judge us. But we were like, we can't access season 1 through 6. And so anyways, Hulu has all of them.
Oh, nice.
We have
Hulu too.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like it a lot?
You know, we don't really watch a lot of TV. So we have like Hulu, Netflix, and Amazon Prime. But like,
I'm thinking of getting rid of our like cable.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know. We don't have time to watch TV, and then we'll watch like a movie. You know what shows I kind of really like watching with my daughters? Like, they have the cooking show for kids. Is it like MasterChef Junior?
Oh, yes.
Right?
I love
so
it.
That's really
one
cute
we binged.
and like inspiring for them to see kids doing that. And I also we watch World of Dance because my girls love dancing. And then we just started watching The Voice, and I really like how they emphasize the person's story. They give like that background. And then they talk about like there was a girl in there. She's like, I started singing when I was 3, and my daughter's like, I'm 3. And so it's really cute to see like they kind of get motivated by those shows, those reality shows. So.
I know. I was telling my husband, I'm like, I would love if my son did MasterChef Junior. I'd probably be the mom crying every episode, like, oh, I made this great meal. No, but yeah, so that's just, yeah. We don't watch too much TV either, but I was telling my husband, I'm like, maybe we need to like really, I don't know, get rid of our cable because we have all those other ones, and that's what we're primarily on if we do watch TV. But yeah, anyways. Okay, so today we're talking about the proprioceptive system, and we're talking about just how to deliver more functional, or why a person would want like a functional deep pressure and whatnot.
Yeah, and what that means.
Or what that means, or, you know, bear hugs. Like, why do you want that increased amount of pressure or whatnot? And what do you really do, or how do you give that and all that? But I think we should like take a few steps back again and kind of like talk about the proprioceptive system.
Yeah.
And what that even means. So what is that? Usually in IEPs, I always explain it. It's just a huge, big, fancy term for input that a child or an individual may receive through their muscles, their tendons, their joints, connective tissues, and whatnot. So, yeah.
That's how I explain it too. You need to talk in simple terms when you're trying to explain it to even teachers and parents. And that's just an easy way to bring it up.
Yep. And I always tie that in. Like I said, even when you're talking about the vestibular system, you don't want to just keep it at those terms because it's like, it's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But the proprioceptive system is usually a modulator. It's like, you know, again, when you're looking at each of the patterns, I kind of described that in the previous episode. There's 3 patterns in sensory processing that you're going to kind of want to make note of. So there's the sensory modulation pattern, sensory motor pattern, and the sensory discrimination pattern. Sometimes, and oftentimes and not, they talk mainly about the sensory modulation issue. So sometimes you'll see kiddos that are hyper responsive. So whether they are, you know, they're not able to regulate it and it's too much if there's a lot of input that is being provided, or they're hyper responsive. So, and then there's also the cravers and whatnot. So sometimes a kiddo may appear like they're craving a lot of input, but they're not really paying attention to safety awareness. So they might be your head bangers, you know, taking a lot of risky, movements just to try to get that input.
Hanging, jumping.
Intense, crashing. Where they're just crashing. I mean, they're going to the highest level of cabinets that you have and jumping off. So those are some things that you might see within that area. And being that the proprioceptive system influences your muscles, or it involves your muscles, your tendons, and your joints and all of that, it's going to affect posture. It's going to affect your motor planning. It's going to affect how a child, now when you look at the discrimination component of that, it's going to look at, the gradation of forces and whatnot. It's going to look at, how a child is able to, really actively engage, or co-contract some of the muscles, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So, again, it's a lot of information to think about. And the proprioceptive system, I mean, like I said, with the vestibular system, it can be its own course in itself for a few weeks. And I feel the same way with the proprioceptive system.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, it's, how do I explain it? Sometimes you'll see kiddos that may be, again, seeking a lot of input orally. They're constantly putting their hands in their mouth. They're chewing on their clothes and really making holes in their clothes because they really need that input. And sometimes, and oftentimes, the go-to intervention for that, again, it's just a sensory-based intervention, is like a Chullery or gum and whatnot, but it's only a short-term effect. And again, it's based off of the theory, but it's not necessarily true SI and understanding the process of it and why you're doing certain things. And you may not see it last long. It may not be what the child needs because, again, the proprioceptive system is more of a modulator. So a child may be demonstrating some hypersensitivities to sound or, visual stimuli, and they use the proprioceptive system to kind of calm their bodies, and that's the only way they know how to do that.
Yeah.
So, what do you do if a child is seeking a lot of input? Again, I will always stress this, it takes a person who has an eye for what you're wanting to see and what you're seeing, and you really have to understand the environment and how that plays a role in the behavior of what's happening prior, what's happening after.
Yeah.
And, looking at that full picture, because, sometimes you'll even see like, okay, the kiddo is seeking a lot of prop input. Let's give them the weighted materials. And that's a hot topic right now as far as, the availability. I feel like it's a great tool when it's used appropriately.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that you kind of want to keep in mind. And I kind of wish there was a little bit more education about weighted materials or weighted objects, because, one of the basic ones is you don't want it heavier than 10% of your body weight. But there isn't much discussion on what if there's joint laxity. You never want to give weighted materials or weighted wrist bands or ankle bands to a child may have, because they can cause the dislocation. It could be, the child can be moving in different positions that you don't want them to be in.
Yeah, I think too, so like even weighted blankets, right? I think you can get them at Walmart or, easily get weighted materials online, and parents and teachers have a really good intention with trying to think like, okay, I'm going to get this weighted material because they know the basics, right? They know it's going to maybe be calming to their system. So their first reaction is, okay, so we're going to get this weighted material and it's going to help the child. But there is a lot more, like you said, that goes into it. And so that availability of those items, and just without a lot of maybe education behind it and maybe some safety tips, that's where OTs can kind of come in and really educate on that and help guide like proper use of weighted materials.
Exactly. And again, there's a lot of emphasis on the modulation pattern, but there's not a lot of emphasis on the discrimination and the sensory motor patterns, which are important to remember. And again, you're not going to want to just look at the modulation pattern and then be like, okay, they need this because they're seeking it. Okay, let's give it to them. That'll help regulate their system. It doesn't work that way. You have to really try to look at that in a situation where, okay, this is what's happening. Because if there's how do I explain this? If there's not proper co-activation of certain muscle groups. So say, for example, your biceps, triceps, there's not, if there's is typical co-contraction of those muscles, there's going to be more stability at that joint that they share. So if you're not seeing that, then and the child starts to, how do I explain, not develop habits, but has patterns that have been formed that aren't typical or the way you want them to be seen, then that is going to influence the discrimination component. So then that'll influence the gradation of the force. That'll also influence the amount of strength. So you really want to focus on making sure that there is that co-contraction within the muscle groups on the joint that they share.
Okay.
Does that even make sense? I
hope
it
does.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't fully know that.
Yeah.
So that was,
and it's something that, again, you're going to want to look to see what the child's tone is, their muscle tone when you're evaluating. You're going to want to look to see, how they're able to maintain different positions and their postural control. Again, it's all related to the vestibular system as well too, but how are they able to maintain that position? And then you also look at the external forces that they are, experiencing. Are they able to maintain that stability and balance? And, there's a lot that you're going to want to evaluate and then be able to interpret. And then you're also going to want to see, how they're, depending on where they're positioned, how are they able to move? How is their play? Because, and again, you'll see some kiddos who have autism and they may have this challenge, they may not. But say, for example, they're playing with a toy and they play with it the exact same way every single time that they play with it. And it may not be purposeful, or in a sense where they're not playing with it as it was intended to be played with. And they may not know how to do that. But again, the proprioceptive system isn't a standalone system. It works with the vestibular system. It works with the tactile system. So you really need to get a good picture of what the child is fully doing with all systems, so then you can get a good hypothesis of what's really happening and develop a really strong intervention plan. So, for example, the tactile system's related to the proprioceptive system. If the child is having a hard time modulating the type of input they're getting, they're not going to have the abilities to discriminate the type of tactile input. And again, that all influences motor planning. It influences the proprioceptive. So it kind of works hand in hand together. So when people ask, okay, how do we give the deep pressures? How do we give, functional deep pressure? Do we just give them hugs all the time and that'll help? And again, that's only looking at the modulation component. It's not really looking at the other patterns of potential dysfunction. And so, again, for example, my son is, he was born with C-section, so I kind of had an idea that he might be seeking a little bit more input, and he totally does. My kiddo is probably going to be a kiddo that climbs Yosemite, like one of the mountains, and just like jumps off free for all. But he's a seeker. Yeah, he craves it, not to the point of like any huge safety concerns that would be big red flags, but with him, I kind of give him his deep pressures, and he loves squeezes. He loves the crash pad is like his go-to toy. He loves jumping off of it, climbing in and out. He loves sandwich squeezes. So yeah, I mean, that's something that you could do and you can give that input, but you're going to want to make sure that there's no issues with the joint, their joints, and that there's not hypermobility, especially when you're working with kiddos that may have other diagnoses like cerebral palsy, Down syndrome. You have to really look at that full picture and what their tone is and all of that before you say, yeah, go for that, because you can potentially dislocate if you squeeze too hard. You can do those types of things. So that's where it's really important to kind of get guided by, first of all, your physician, but then the occupational therapist that's following you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, that's like a long answer probably to that. But, they say, a lot of things too is like it's related to the vestibular system. And so if you were to go to like a clinic or whatnot, they may tie in proprioceptive input. They may with the vestibular system. So after they do the linear movements, again, that activates postural control, all of that type of thing. And then you might do, an obstacle course, but it's not just any obstacle course, or it's not just a obstacle course that you can purchase online. It may be well thought of and planned as far as what you're really wanting to see. So it could be a lot of pushing and pulling, again, to get that co-contraction of different muscle groups that you're wanting to participate in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, like when my daughters were little, like we did a lot of different prop type activities, which is really good. Like we talked about with the vestibular system to start developing their system. So lots of like you said, playing on the ground, like we did different types of walking and animal walking and holding them up in a wheelbarrow position. And that's all really, really good functional activities for them to do to develop that system, like I said, but that carries over to some kind of treatment ideas that you would use with kiddos who are having some dysfunction in that area. But like even for my daughter, for both my daughters, my youngest one, and specifically when I get her up in the wheelbarrow position, she has a really hard time like holding that position, and her body kind of slumps. She needs a lot of support in that position. So we've just been kind of trying to work on it and build that even like awareness of where her body is. So that was something I needed to, I saw we're going to work on with her at home. But like you said, looking at all of the joints, looking at the co-contraction, I was noticing she wasn't quite getting all of that. So, but
it's interesting. It's so, right? Like it's, and again, if the child only has challenges with the modulation component, then give them that heavy work, wheelbarrow, go lift up, have them carry a few books from place to place, especially if they're in the school setting. You have the teacher friends that they can potentially do that to help with modulation if you start to notice that, and that's a needed intervention.
Yeah.
But again, I think the biggest thing that I feel like I would want, parents and teachers and therapists to understand is that, again, it's not a go-to, and it's not a go-to for
everybody. Yeah.
And sensory is not a cookie cutter intervention. You really need to look at the full picture and be very cautious of things that you may read either online or things that you may see on social medias, because I know that there's good intention, and I believe that everybody has good intentions with it, but sometimes it may not be the intervention that the child is needing to really mature the systems that could have challenges with. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what tips would you have if you were, say, working on discrimination in the proprioceptive system? Like how would you approach that?
So if there's, like, for example, poor gradation of force with the proprioceptive system, a child, sometimes it may appear, and you'll see this a lot too, if the child has poor gradation of force, there might be some of the kiddos that go into the principal's office.
Yes, because they're
recess
too rough.
Because
they
they're
don't
so
know.
rough. They have no idea, and they were just playing tag, but they pushed, their friend Johnny down. So those are things to kind of keep in mind. And when I see that, it makes me feel good to explain those types of things in IEP meetings, because I'm like, no, don't get him in trouble for this. He's really, let's help him understand, how much force he's using. You might see kiddos that are pushing down on their paper really, really hard, or they're not pushing enough. So they're not getting that feedback, that they really need on how much muscle force to use. So, you can do, again, not that it's a Band-Aid intervention. That's not what I'm saying, but good interventions that you can still provide to kiddos, like, if a kiddo is pushing down on their pencils really, really hard, then you may want to do like a mechanical pencil to give them the automatic feedback. It breaks, boom, they have to adjust their grasp. You can put, your sandpapers underneath it. Again, sometimes I over exaggerate. Like if I'm like, all right, high five, and I know that they're gonna push full force. I always do. I don't know why. Those are little things that you can do. I'm like, high five, and then they give me a full swing, and I go, ooh, ow, and I kind of shake my hand off, because I'm giving them that, even though it wasn't that hard, or that hard for me anyways.
Yeah.
I over exaggerate it. So that's a cue for them that, hey, maybe next time, let's try that again. That was really, really hard.
Yeah.
Kind of softer. Or I'll use the terminology, okay, give me that full force, kind of like an elephant. Boom. What about a mouse? How would you change it? And then you can see it's tricky because you have to really think about it.
Yeah.
So those are just some examples and tips or whatnot. But yeah. I need to breathe again. I'm pregnant. My baby is pushing on my lungs. But yeah, I mean, those are just different things to kind of think about. And again, it's not like, it's not, of course you want to, you don't want to, if you're like, I don't want to give my kid a hug. No, give your kids hugs, but just, you don't want to give them a full blown bear hug and whatnot. Especially if there may be some concerns. Again, if you have any concerns with this, definitely talk to your physician and your OT, but.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's my thought of it. Yeah. Any thoughts?
No.
I'm like that. It's like I said.
I think you covered a lot of it.
Prop is, I mean, I like all sensory systems. It's all fun, but it's a lot of information. And, like I said, I just think that I love it. That's it. Okay. So for our Momma segment, today we're talking about preparing for our C-section.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous.
I was just gonna say, like you've been there, but still, like every time it's just,
And I think it's because this time I know it's going to be planned, and I think that like the first time it was like I went through labor, and then it was just like you're so exhausted and tired, and you can't even process anything around you because you're hungry too. And then boom, they're like, you have to go for a C-section. It's like, yes, just get this over with kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you're so tired. But then this time around, I'm like, oh man, like I know what to expect kind of, which is a positive. But then I know what to expect, which is like the scary part. I guess it's because, not that it's like, I guess it's just the recovery component to that. And then just, I don't know. I told my husband, I'm like, well, at least I'll be rested this time around and I'll have an idea with what I need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can kind of better prepare for that. For sure.
And then I can, so I don't know. I think I just talked to you about this the other day though, but like now that I'm growing, like where I had my previous C-section, the scar tissue, I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but it's starting to pull and it totally feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And the doctor was telling me that it's like, it could just be everything pulling, and it might even feel like that even if you didn't get a C-section the first time. But, obviously more so now that you have the C-section, most likely that scar tissue is like feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, I
totally
think it does. And it does depend how your scar feels. Like, so I only picked up on working on scar management when I worked with outpatient hands, and we did a lot of that. So then after I had my C-section, you have that nice little scar, and depending on how you're healing, you can heal like really tight with a really tight scar, just depends. And my one side of my scar was really tight, the other side perfectly fine, and you could push on it. It wasn't hard or lumpy or anything, but I knew on the tight section I would massage that area. And there's even other things, if you get like keloids or anything else on the skin itself, you can do like silicone gel patches, but trying to take care of that area.
Because I don't know if you've noticed, and I can't even fully see it. You guys, my belly is getting big, but so I like try to see it with a mirror. But did you notice your scar tissue change color? Like your scar change color?
Well, I guess in the beginning it was red, but it's changing back to just regular color, like flesh color.
Our bodies are interesting in life. I just want to throw that out there for all you moms.
Yeah.
I even feel like when I talked to one of my friends about this, about this, and she was, because I don't know, one day with my pregnancy with my first son, I got out of the shower and I'm like, what's on my neck? And I looked and like my skin kind of got darker.
Yeah.
And then like my underarms are like darker and all of that is darker. And I'm changes. Like, what is happening to my body, right? And anyway, so that was my first pregnancy, but I'm noticing that the color of my like scar with my previous C-section changed.
It's changed.
And so the doctor looked at it and was like, totally fine. Obviously, you're going to want to talk to your doctor if you have any crazy things happening.
Yeah.
But she said it was fine and normal. I'm like, maybe the same thing's happening with like,
yeah, so many skin changes can happen during pregnancy. I had, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but I had the brown spots around my eyes. That stayed for a really long time.
Really?
Really dark. I look almost like a raccoon, like if I didn't have makeup on.
Really?
Yeah. I can't remember what hyperpigmentation. Is it melasma? I'm drawing a blank.
I don't know.
I can't remember. I can't remember.
Maybe that happened to me and I just thought I was super tired. I was like, shoot, maybe I need to sleep more. That's why I'm sleeping more.
Yeah.
Man.
But yeah, so, for me, both of my C-sections were unexpected because I had went into labor my second 5 weeks early. So I was planning on having a VBAC and then I went into labor and then boom, I need to have a C-section, but I still knew what to expect.
Oh, so you were going to go in. So you did have labor with your second one.
Yeah. Yeah. I started preterm labor. They didn't know why. And they even tried to figure out what was going on and what caused it. And they couldn't. They thought maybe I had an infection or something, but
I just thought they automatically did the emergency C-section.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
So I think for me, I mean, obviously you're nervous, right? That's normal. You're going to be nervous.
Well, and then it's just then it's your second one. So you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do two? You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So there's a lot of,
But when it comes to like preparing for the C-section, if you know you're going to have one, or if you're there and, it's like us, we have to have one. It's an emergency. We're rushed in to have a C-section. Like you can expect for us, at least, I was separated from my husband because we were allowed one person to go in. So he was getting prepped. And at that time, I'm like, okay, I just try to sit and breathe. I'm like, okay, this is going to be okay. Like said a prayer. And then when they brought me in to the surgery room, I was like, oh my gosh, this is intense. Like, you look around and you see everything. So just know that you're in a legit surgery room. And I remember it was freezing in there, and because it's cold and sterile.
Just blue.
Yeah.
It was a date. I was in a daze.
By that point, you were just
like, get this kid out of me, please.
Yeah. So I just, kind of knowing that that's the environment you're going to be in, right? And usually, I don't know, even now, I think you can have, with COVID, you can have one person in there. And I just remember, they prep you, right? And then once you're prepped, it felt like forever by the time my husband was able to come back next to me and sit by my head. And I was like, okay, finally, like you're here. So yeah, I mean, it's a different experience, but just knowing, a little bit of what it might look like is helpful. I think the second time around, I was a little overwhelmed the first time.
And I think too, what I would for sure bring in is like the long handle, like reacher, sock aids. No, I mean, my husband was there, but the reacher, I remember I went to go change in the freaking restroom and okay, you're moving like so slow because you just had surgery, a major surgery. And I remember dropping like two things, and I just remember like having that straight emoji face, like with the eyes like completely like just like, gosh damn it, like really
that wet.
Yes. And so then it's just like something fell on the floor, and I'm just kind of like looking up at myself in the mirror, like large and in charge, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have to now reach down. Anyway, so that's probably one thing that I would bring in.
And my recommendation is if it falls, leave it there. Like, yes, if you are prepared.
I do that now. It's so horrible. My husband come home and he's like, what's that random thing? I'm like, oh, I dropped it earlier. Like, pick and choose your battles. Like, I don't want to pick it up. So
yeah, I think for me too, our friend told us, so a friend that we had a C-section, and I just remember her saying, like, now I know what it's like to have someone help me get dressed. I'm like, why? And she told me, like, I couldn't reach my feet. My husband had to come and help, or the nurse was there the one time, had to help. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, that was good to know, because I was in that position, and I'm calling for my husband, like, I can't do this.
Oh, yeah.
I need help reaching my feet. So what I did, and I do not recommend it, and I'm smart. I don't know why I did this. Instead of bending over, because they tell you not to bend over, I would pick something up with my foot, like with my toes, and bring it up to my hand. I'm like, okay, so I can do it myself. I'm not bending over, but I'm still activating those muscles. Like, what was I thinking? Should have just rested. Yeah.
But taking it easy, again, remember, take it easy. You want to be able to do everything again, because you're mom and you want to do everything, but just take it easy, because you're healing from the inside out.
Yeah.
And all of those types of things.
I think another thing I talked to my sister about, and I don't know if this is maybe too much information, but it was really
continue. Well, continue.
The major thing that was really helpful, we maybe talked about this before, but was that just a squirt bottle, right? Like a squirt bottle, and the nurse showed me.
Well, they have a new, I think it's the Freedom Mom.
What?
It's like a whole little shebang. I was going to look into it. I haven't fully looked into it, but I saw a commercial at one point, and I was like, well, that's kind of crazy to have a commercial about it. But
tell me about
it's
this.
like, it's supposed to be like extra hygiene and all that good stuff.
Okay. Does it use water? Like, you put water in it? Or
I think so.
To look. Well, yeah, because the nurse showed me, they give you a legit squeeze bottle, and you just put warm water in it, and you just kind of like clean yourself that way when you're sitting over the toilet. And okay, so that was my number one thing to have after pregnancy. Like, it was just,
they gave me one too from the hospital, and
so maybe they give them to everybody. I don't know. I thought it was just my nurse, like,
no,
here, try this. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you.
And they gave it to me too, and I was like, I liked it too. And I think I'm going to be more prepared, like with how I'm going to set up like the restroom downstairs, everything upstairs. And then, because I'm like, oh, if I can really, I mean, they don't recommend you go upstairs, but if you do go upstairs, you stay in one level. So I think this time around, I might try to come upstairs and just stay upstairs.
Yeah, because you can't be up and down the stairs.
You can't be up and down, but I could not. I remember trying to sleep on the couch, and our couch is pretty comfortable, but you have to put all the pillows, and then it's just, I was away from the shower, so I couldn't fully, you know what I mean? It's just, who knows? I don't know what I'm going to do.
I think what was hard too with me, my second C-section, because I already had my daughter. Obviously, when you have just a C-section, they tell you not even to pick up your baby from the bassinet, and what your baby weighs from like 7 to 10 pounds. But now you have a toddler who wants to be with you, right? Wants you to pick him up. And so, I would always make sure, like, if I'd sit down and she can climb up to me, and it's just your instinct to want to reach down and pick them up. But you do have to be a little bit just aware of that, so you don't strain yourself.
I did not even think about that.
Yeah.
Oh, and then getting like, I'm going to make sure I take my compression thing.
Oh yeah. Your belly.
Because that was so, it like made me feel way better. That was really nice.
It just kind of pushes everything
back into place. Everything back into place, and then it reminds you like what movements you shouldn't do. I don't know. It just gives you that. I like that.
Gives you that proprioceptive input.
Yes. Nervous. I'm all nervous.
You got
No,
this.
I know. I got it. It'll be good. Yeah.
And to have some food ready, right? This time around, you can have some food ready, because, I mean, you really can't be up cooking. You shouldn't. I think just after.
You know, my best friend, like I said, she made, I don't know if I told you this, but she made like frozen Ziplocs, and she put them all in her freezer, and she like just threw them in the crock pot or Instant Pot. And like, there you go. Another thing we're going to get to is a deep freezer for the milk supply. I was like, I wasted so much milk with our first one.
So jealous.
Literally wasted so much milk, because I was like, I don't know. I think I talked about this when I just like was over clogged.
Oh, and so exactly now you know what to expect when it comes to that.
Nice. That's exactly what I told my husband. I'm like, man, I could have saved a good amount the first time around, but this time around, I'm gonna be like on it. I'm so excited. I'm gonna have like, hi guys, I have like 500 ounces of milk already. Day 20.
I hope it's the same for you. I hope you
I hope so
have
too.
that same experience, because
I hope so.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Anything else? I don't know. I think you kind of...
I think that's pretty much it. I don't know. I'm a planner, but for some reason this I'm just like, I'm nervous. I know it's going to be fine, but it just makes me a little nervous.
Yeah. Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. So don't forget to visit our website at OT.Mommas.Life. We are super excited about our website because we have tons of like show notes and information about us and more. So check that out, and then check out our Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Bye. Thanks for listening.